Encounter is brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches.
Friends, welcome. My name is Mark Hempland. I'm the pastor at the Endwell United Methodist Church, and welcome to Encounter. We have a very special program for you today. I'm joined this morning by Shirlenn O'Brien, who is a certified and licensed wedding coordinator. And welcome, Shirlenn, to the program. I appreciate you being here.
It's nice to have you.
It's exciting to have you here this morning, especially in light of Valentine's Day coming around and such. And we thought it would be an interesting topic, an interesting time to share together as couples are looking towards wedding plans perhaps this spring, this summer, this fall. And so I'm going to be asking Shirlenn many questions about wedding planning. There's some do's and don'ts and such that we hope will be very, very helpful. But let's begin first, Shirlenn, with your background. Can you tell me a little bit about your family and a little bit about your church background to begin?
I am a native of this area. I grew up in Endicott. I've been living in Endwell for 46 years. We have 3 children, all grown. Our 2 sons live here in Endwell. Our daughter is in Providence, Rhode Island. And we have 4 granddaughters. Wonderful. Which we love, ranging in age from 22 down to 3 years old. So it's exciting. It's really exciting. We have a lot of fun with our grandchildren. And I grew up in Central Methodist Church, Central United Methodist Church, and have been active there through the years. I'm currently president of United Methodist Women there, and I just served on the 175th anniversary committee.
Wonderful. So you have some history.
I do have some
Fantastic.
history. Yes.
And along that history came the idea of coordinating weddings and being a wedding planner of sorts.
It did.
How did that come about?
Well, as a little girl, I was always interested and loved weddings, and I guess then it was the gowns and colors and that type of thing. I just loved it. And my mother always said to me, you're going to end up in the wedding business. And I thought, no. But anyway, I started a little wedding business in my home of mainly invitations and accessory items. And I would run into brides and their mothers or family members after the wedding, and I would say, how did everything go? And they would say, we just couldn't wait for it to be over with. We were so tired, we did not realize what was involved, especially towards the end, And I thought, this is really sad, and I would like to be able to do something to help these people, to help people. So I was always looking through wedding bride magazines, and I happened to see an ad for an association of consultants, and I contacted them, and they were going to be offering a course in consulting in Rochester, New York, in a couple months after I talked with them. So I was able to get into that class, and it was 5 days, all day long, like from 9 to 4:30, and then at night, a lot of work to do,
for the next
and
day,
assignments it was like being back in school. So, and then there were tests, at the end, and that's how I got my certification. And I actually had weddings booked, even when I was going through the course. And of course, I learned a lot more, and I was always learning. You never had you were always learning. Everything was changing.
So your connection then with the Central United Methodist Church, you are at one time and such things, you were the wedding coordinator that worked with the pastor and
I am doing
such
that
things,
now.
and still doing that now.
Right. Once I retired from my private business, I wanted to give back to the church if I could and help them out. I had worked in other churches where they had their church wedding coordinators that were there. And first I didn't know, you really don't need that person there. But I was very impressed. And so once I retired, I thought, this is a way that I can give back, and I can still stay in the business a little bit, or stay involved in the weddings, which I did. I've always loved weddings. So,
absolutely.
So that's how that all came about. Once I retired, I volunteered, and I'm doing it now. So
great.
Yeah.
Great.
It's a real service.
It absolutely is.
It really is. Not only do the ministers, my minister, appreciate it. He says it's a gift. Our current minister said it's a gift to him. But I really find that the men, especially ushers and groomsmen, it's unbelievable how they're always looking for me after the wedding to thank me for what I've done for them. And it doesn't seem like I've done that much, but they appreciate just having someone
Yes.
there.
Yeah. Coming from a pastor's viewpoint, I can see how that would be such a blessing and such a gift.
Right.
I've never had the opportunity to work with a wedding coordinator continually and
Right.
such. I've had them in certain weddings and such, but
Right.
just to take care of so many of those little things that happen, especially the day of the wedding
Exactly.
where the pastor is involved.
Right, and to be in the background and knowing that, someone is there and you're up front and, not having to
Yes.
worry about some of
Yeah,
those things.
great.
Yeah, that's true. That's
Well,
true.
let's roll up our sleeves here, and there may be people that are watching this and knowing that they are going to have a wedding in the near future and such things. And let's talk about some of the things that are involved with the pre-planning and the day of and the reception and such
Okay.
things. But let's look at some of the things some of the pre-planning things. Let's go with that. They're newly engaged. They're excited. They
right.
perhaps are looking to set a date or whatever. What are some of the things that couples and families should be looking at that stage,
Well,
just getting started?
Okay, I think one of the first things is the couple need to decide what they really want in their wedding, what they can afford, what is important to them, what their priorities are for that day. And I think they need to talk with parents, but anymore, sometimes parents aren't even paying for the weddings, So the first thing that I feel that's very important is to establish a budget. That's really important.
Great point.
You need a framework to work within. It can get out of control otherwise. So it's really important to know who is going to be paying, how much they're contributing. Is it going to be the couple? Is it going to be, help from the bride's parents and the groom's parents? Whatever. They just need to know that. And that's a good starting point no matter what. And I feel that that's a good communication process too that helps them in, promoting a long-lasting marriage.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
really important.
Yes.
Because sometimes finances are, just kind of avoided.
Absolutely.
So, once they establish all that, then naturally they want to have a date in mind. But I think before they do have a date, or it's set in concrete, they need to look around if they have specific places that they might want their receptions, depending on how far ahead, how long they have to work. A lot of times we're working 12 to 18 months ahead of time, especially if they're not flexible. If they really are set, this is what I want, this is the way it's going to
Yes.
be. And that's fine. But once they look around, and it's so important when you're looking around to, really ask about prices, what's included, and naturally to set your time with the church or wherever you're going to,
Yes.
that's very important.
Yes.
Church, synagogue, whatever, and make sure that that's available. You can't just assume that, and a lot of people would have a photographer and other things, but wouldn't have thought about booking a church yet or a place where they want to be married,
Absolutely.
And it doesn't always work out that
Right.
they can get that day,
Yes.
There's a lot of bazaars in the summer for at various churches and different things. So that's really important,
Okay.
to do that.
Okay.
So budgeting is, you may think that that's an odd thing to come up with first, but it's so important. And your guest list, because every guest that you add to that list is going to,
Yes.
make it a little more expensive,
Yes. Yes.
So you have to keep those things in mind.
So they look at their budget, and they then coordinate the reception and the church and get the guest lists together. It's only 4 or 5 years ago that I went through all of that, and I'm
Okay.
just sitting here shaking my head going, you are absolutely correct every step of the way here. So the date and all of that is taken care of, and they've discussed finances. What would be the top few things that they then would be looking at as they pre-plan?
Right. Well, a photographer, and there's a big difference in photographers. And I always have encouraged couples to check out, interview a couple, 2 or 3. There are photographers that really concentrate more on the posed pictures, and that can take a lot of time out of your day, a lot. And by the end of the day, you're saying to yourself, "Oh no, I don't want any more pictures taken." And then I think more and more, you're seeing more photographers that are candid. and they follow you around more, but they don't, I mean, you will still have some family pictures and, group pictures that you want taken. Important to give them a list, whoever you choose to, let them know, so you don't have to worry about that. If you're going to do video, that's another thing. And one thing that I do want to mention when choosing these, it's really important that these people know what the church policies are, because it does vary from church to church. In some, they can be wherever they want, and there are other, in other churches, there are no pictures that are taken during the actual ceremony, and it's very important that they're going to be respectful of this.
Absolutely.
It really is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, what about any words of wisdom when it comes to invitations or those other little things that they have to take care of once they have the date and the money and all of that? Are there other little nitty-gritty things that they need to make sure?
There's a lot of things. But invitations, I always encouraged brides to order 25 extra because it's going to be very costly if you don't order enough and have to come back to an original, 25 or 50. So it's always good to have extras. If you think you're going to have 10, that might, you might not add that many more people, but these are things where you can save money. And of course, flowers, a florist, that can be elaborate or, whatever you want. A cake. And I've noticed that a lot of couples in the last few years have not been getting a typical large wedding cake.
You're absolutely right.
They may get a tier or two and then serve cupcakes, or a lot of people just get sheet cakes. And again, it's a cost savings. Some of the bakers let you rent cakes, so they look like you have a real cake, but it's a fake. If favors, that can get really costly. You really have to look at a lot of things and make it what people really want. I mean, I've seen so many favors left at weddings, but money, a lot of money has been spent on that.
Absolutely.
So I think that's really, important to think about that. I think when a bride goes to buy her gown, which is a very exciting time, I say taking fewer people with you is a lot better. There's a show on TV now, Yes to the Dress, and I catch it every once in a while, and I think, oh my goodness. I was watching it the other night, and there were 16 or 18 people with this bride to get her dress.
Oh my.
She left crying without a dress because everyone had a different opinion. And that's just, it's not fair to that bride at all. And she should be able to get what she wants, she really should. So fewer is better, in my opinion, because you do want her happy. She doesn't want to be, upset, and this should be a happy time. But there'll be some tears probably, throughout the planning process too.
It's always amazing how many spinning plates there are.
Oh yeah.
With rings and all kinds of things.
Absolutely.
Making sure that all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted.
Oh, there's a lot of details, and that you just don't realize. One of the big things is, as it comes time for the reception, is are you going to do assigned seating? And that takes thought, and it takes time. And I think a lot of couples, what they do now is they'll do their friends, the bride's parents, and the bride's parents will do family and friends of theirs, and the groom's family as well. But it can be a frustrating time. But I think it's an important thing, because when your guests arrive, they want a comfort zone.
Absolutely.
They really do.
Yeah, it has to be well thought out.
Right, it really does. It really does.
That, yeah.
It takes a lot of planning and organization, Keeping good track. Contracts, I can't tell you how, oh my goodness, contracts or agreements written are so important. And a lot of times they'll want to use a family friend or, as a photographer. And it's not always the best thing to do. You can have disappointments, and it can kind of, get into a friendship thing. But everything should be written down, everything. I just cannot stress the importance. Have your taxes, your gratuities, know what the top, your top line is going to be that you owe. A delivery schedule, and that type of thing. Everything needs to be in a contract. don't take anything verbally.
Great point.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask this. Let's say that they're really, time is getting close, and they're doing a good job, and you're meeting with them, and all things are moving forward. Is there any words of wisdom for a pastor? Many times it's the rehearsal that can be a real cause of emotion and all kinds of things. And I always tell the couples that I marry that the rehearsal is a walkthrough.
Right.
It's not a time to make decisions.
Exactly.
Those decisions have already been made. It's a walkthrough. And if I'm doing my job well, we get through what we need to get through, but it's not an all-night affair.
Exactly, because a lot of questions can be raised that night that they haven't given any thought to.
Yes.
One of the things is do you want a special usher to see, the mothers and grandmothers? Yes. And this is something that I always had, because I always did a wedding day itinerary, so I would have everything down there. But and I always would say, you need to let your clergy or whoever is performing your ceremony know these things. Yes. Because it just takes it eats up time at the rehearsal, and if they haven't given any thought to this, it's like, oh dear, back and forth.
Yes.
So that's really important. Another thing that I think is very important for clergy to know is if there are divorced, separated parents, anymore you can get 4 sets of parents. It's very easy. Significant others. Yes. Sometimes the relationships aren't all that amicable, and I just like to always think that the parents will be respectful and considerate of the couple that day, and so there are no problems.
Yes.
But you really do need to think about seating.
Absolutely.
You really do need to think about this, and this is something that I always try to point out too.
Good.
And not only to think about it and say what you want, but let them know.
Right.
And discuss it with them ahead of time.
Yeah, so it's not a surprise to them.
It's not a surprise, and everyone can think about it, and if they don't like, perhaps offer another suggestion or something.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. As I sit with couples and prepare, I tell them there's hundreds of things that can go wrong the day of the wedding. My role is to minimize that number.
Right.
And I need to know any family dynamics that may be hanging out there that I'm not aware of.
Right. That's right. That's right.
So the rehearsal goes wonderful, and they may have a rehearsal dinner of some kind and such things, and it's the wedding day.
Right.
Any pearls of wisdom, things that you can discuss?
Well, one thing is to definitely be on time.
Amen.
You don't have to be fashionably late for your wedding.
Yes.
I think things go much smoother if everyone is there ahead of time. A lot of times brides dress at the church, but be there ahead of time. At least the guy should be there, the groomsmen should be there 45 minutes to an hour ahead. Usually they get their boutonnieres there. That's one thing I always did, and make sure they knew where the restrooms were, because people will come in and want to know that. It's, on being on time, and not only for the wedding party, but for the parents.
Yes.
I hate to say it, but parents are late sometimes,
Yes.
and you hate to hold you. You want to keep things on time and moving that day, because if you don't, you're going to get stressed out, because things aren't going to get done the way you wanted them to. For instance, pictures. I always suggest to brides, or recommend to them, that they get their hair appointments and makeup appointments, schedule them well in advance, and get there early, the earlier part of the day, so they're not running from their home. The photographer's waiting for you for pictures.
Yes.
Because again, this is a stress factor, and you want your day to be nice and relaxing and enjoyable.
Yes.
You've put a lot of time into it, money and everything. So I think this is really important for you to consider.
Yeah, and really have to map out the whole day.
You do.
That is so important, because one of the things that's always been a challenge without a wedding coordinator is the days going well, but because of schedules, the attendants may have arrived late, and then you have the photographer who has the ushers out in the front lawn taking pictures when they should be escorting people in. So it's really having a careful plan.
And I've noticed lately, it seems as if there are more pictures being taken, even with the bride and groom prior to the ceremony.
Yes.
And this is another thing, you have to, as you said, you can't have guests arriving and have them still in the church or wherever the ceremony is going to be. You know, they don't really want to be seen, at least the bride doesn't.
Yeah.
So that's it's a real important thing, and it's important to let whoever is performing the ceremony know that this is what our plan is. So they know ahead of time.
Absolutely.
You know, because it can mess things up a little bit.
And it's amazing how one aspect can...
Absolutely. Another thing, it's very important for them to have something to eat, you know, especially a bride and her attendants don't go without eating. Anytime, but in the summer when it can be really warm, you know what I mean? The heat can get to people.
Yes.
So that's very important. I definitely suggest they do not have any alcohol before the ceremony.
Right.
I think that's really, you know, very important.
Yes.
They're going to a ceremony,
Yes.
and they have time that they can party afterwards.
Yes,
So I think it's very important that they, you know, do that.
So they've planned. The wedding was marvelous. Everyone was on time.
Right.
Everything went well. What is your recommendation to couples from the recessional on, but still at the church? Are there any pearls of wisdom that you can share? Because I know that some couples will have receiving lines there, a pro or con, or they go hide somewhere.
Right, before pictures.
Yes.
You know, I think a lot of couples do have a receiving line at church. It's a good way to see your guests. Because once you get at the reception, you might not get to every table.
Yes.
That takes time too. And they are coming to your ceremony. They have been invited. It's definitely a courtesy to speak to your guests. If they don't come to the ceremony and you don't get to speak to them in the reception, that's, you know, again, that's up to them. But I think that it works out very well that way. And I know at our church, we take them outside too, and then do a fake exit, and then they can go back in and take all the pictures they want. Another thing that they need to make sure with the church, a lot of the Catholic churches have masses late afternoon, so they can't stay that long for pictures. So it's really, you know, you need to know the policies of the church.
Yes.
You know, definitely need to know the church policies.
Yeah, especially with that receiving line. I agree.
Right.
That is so important. And even just for the sake of the day, from a pastor's point of view, the receiving line is a way to greet your guests, but also a way of getting the people out of the church.
Out of the church,
so
right.
that
That's
they
true.
Can go back in and do what they need to
that's
do.
True.
And such
Yeah, because it can take time. And again, a lot of it depends on the photographer that you're using. You know, how long your pictures are going to take and everything. But, and then usually on from that, sometimes after they leave the church, they go to another place for more pictures, outdoor pictures, before they get to their reception. It's always nice to be able to have it scheduled so your guests, if they go right from the church to the reception, I mean, they're always going to have waiting time. I always try to, you know, less is better. But again, you can't always make their minds up, you know, the way you see it, you know. And then I didn't cover much on the reception, but you know, your reception is the biggest portion out of your budget. And again, I said the more every guest you add can be, you know, as an added expense, as well as when you add your attendance. And that's another thing that, before I get into the reception, it is such a common courtesy when brides are inviting women, or, you know, their wedding party, asking them to be a part of it, to let them know what to expect as far as gowns, prices, showers, what they expect, because anymore a lot of the brides want to run their own shower, or, you know, say what they want, dictate. And I've heard many bridesmaids that have been very upset that it's cost them so much money. So that's really, you know, an important thing to consider too. And if they give them the option, if they don't think they want to spend the money or they cannot afford it, then they, you know, it may be a longer lasting relationship then, which is sad to say. But you know, your reception is important. And again, are you going to do a sit down, a buffet? Prices vary according to what you do choose. So you need to look into different, you know, all the aspects of the place has to offer. A hall definitely is going to be less, but then you hire a caterer, and it could be you end up renting a lot of things. You might have to rent dishes, you might have to rent your linens. Sometimes caterers include it, but not always. So you just have to look into all these things, you know. And then your band or your DJ, really, I mean, they're the ones that are going to keep that reception moving once it's started. So some DJ services have more than one DJ. You may know of one, and you may, you know, actually request one, but make sure that you know the person and meet with the person that's going to be doing it. Sometimes they have little games they play ahead of time, like, you know, throwing keys and different things in, and that's, a lot of people don't want that.
Right.
So it's like very important that tasteful things are done and what you want, you know. But they, like I say, and I always like to have an itinerary for the reception as well, so that when you're introduced, you may do your first dance. It moves things along. It doesn't take time out from the actual, you know.
I've always been amazed going through this again with my children a few years ago. With all the little areas that you have to tend to, you think you have it all done, and then another 4 areas that you had forgotten about
That's so true.
emerges.
It's always good to have a good planning book. You know, you go to Barnes & Noble, and there's a lot of good wedding planners, and that helps a lot. Keep your contracts, your receipts, keep your records really good. It's important. It's the only thing that you have to fall back on if something goes wrong.
Absolutely.
You know, it really is.
Absolutely.
So that's like really important. But in the reception, you know, I've gotten I remember one reception so distinctly. I got there, the cake, it was a very tall wedding cake, and it was starting to go.
Oh boy.
And it was like, we had to call that we called her really
This
fast.
has been very informative, and especially around Valentine's Day. I thank you for your time
You're
and
welcome.
such things. And what a blessing I'm sure you have been and will continue to be to couples. So
Thank you.
I know that this is going to be very helpful for those that are listening. I want to thank you again, and I want to thank you for viewing us today through this encounter. And on behalf of the Broome County Council of Churches, I ask God's blessings upon you all, and have a marvelous day. God bless.